Hi, I'm Caitlin Van Mall, host of I Survived. If you enjoy I Survived, we are excited to announce a new launch. Starting November 15th, we'll be reposting our classic episodes from Season 1 of I Survived. We hope to reach a whole new audience with these important stories of survival. And for those of you who have been with us since the beginning, we think these powerful episodes warrant another listen. Starting November 15th, look out for those episodes and more news from I Survived.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 238 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, what's going on with you?
Hey, man, I'm doing good. How about you?
Doing great.
Awesome.
Excellent. Ready to head to France.
To
record this episode.
Yes.
It cost us quite a bit in tickets.
It did.
But it's worth it.
It is worth it.
Now, TCAT cost us quite a bit as well because we went to China.
We did.
Long flight to discuss the murder of Neil Haywood by Bogu Kailai.
Do feel it was unfair that you got the really nice seat.
First class, you mean?
The thing that you could lay down in
Sure.
and nap. And I
had a sleeper.
You did have sleeper, and I had basically what was considered like a wooded slotted chair seat.
And they brought that out special for you.
Yeah, the whole way there.
But definitely check out this case on TCAT. You know, it involves family secrets, murder, politics, and a police cover-up. It's a huge case. I mean, it really made headlines all over the world. Before we jump into this episode of Unsolved, let's give our shout-outs. For Patreon, we had Melissa Nance.
Hey, Melissa.
Lisa Cooper.
What's going on, Lisa?
Jana Sanders.
Hey, Jana.
Lilith Wolf.
We'll appreciate that, Lilith.
Marty Irway.
Hey, there's Marty.
VMMF.
Well, VMMF, you too.
Braden Draper.
What's up, Braden?
Addison Edwards Blanton.
Hey, Addison.
Kayla Smith.
Hey, there's Kayla.
Astrid Maria Nair.
I appreciate that, Astrid.
Kelly Church.
Hey, Church.
Lauren.
Well, thank you, Lauren.
Charles Cook.
Hey, Charles.
Courtney Johnson.
Well, that's a neat way to spell Courtney.
It is cool. Jose Melchor.
Hey, Jose.
Brandy Hamanaka.
What's going on, Hamanaka?
Nora.
Oh, there's Nora.
Haley.
Hi, Haley.
And Benjamin Hoffs.
What's up, Hoofs?
So we appreciate all that new support. And then if we go back into the vault, Gibbs, this week we selected Nicholas S.
I appreciate that, Nicholas.
Yeah, we appreciate the new support, the continued support. For PayPal donations, we had Heather Allen.
Hey, Heather.
David Rhodes.
What's up, David?
And Jennifer Benson.
Thanks, Jennifer.
So thanks to all of you as well. All right, buddy, are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved?
I'm ready.
In this episode, we're talking about the Annecy Shootings, also known as the French Alps Shootings or the Chevaline Killings. So we mentioned it, right? We're headed to France.
Yeah.
Long way for us, but also possibly some difficult pronunciations.
For you.
We had a lot of difficult pronunciations in our TCAT episode.
Thank goodness I was able to help.
You were. We'll do our best here as well. It was on a late summer afternoon in 2012 that three members of the al-Hilli family from Britain and an unrelated French man were brutally executed along a popular tourist road in the picturesque Combe-D'Ire Forest. This is located in the east of France, close to the area of Chevaline and nestled in the French Alps. And obviously that's where you get the name of the murders. The killings also became known as the Annecy Shootings, as Chevaline was just south of Lake Annecy, an idyllic and popular summer vacation destination for people from around Europe.
The place to be.
Have you ever been to France? Have you ever been to the Alps?
We just went there.
Well, besides that trip.
Oh, there's other times I'm not allowed to talk about.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah.
I got you. I had never been. Those who lost their lives were Saad al-Hilli, his wife, Iqbal, and her mother, Souhaila al-Alaf. The French victim was 45-year-old Silvain Mollier, who didn't know the al-Hillis and didn't have any connection to them whatsoever. There were two survivors, the al-Hillis' young daughters, Zainab and Zina. The family was gunned down after stopping their car while Sylvain was cycling through the area at the time. Gibbs, what made the crime so horrifying was its seemingly indiscriminate nature. I mean, this was the last thing anyone expected to occur in one of the most beautiful parts of the world.
Yeah, when you're in that serene area and just beautiful nature, last thing you expect is hear gunfire and have something so tragic occur.
And what resulted was, you had families on vacation. You also had the locals who were suddenly confronted with this terrifying knowledge that a gunman was on the loose. The case received international media attention. Both British and French police set to work, investigating all manner of scenarios and possible connections between the al-Hillis and the French victim and anyone local to the area. In some of the research, Gibbs said that they looked at people as far away as Iraq for possible connections. Several theories were pursued, including that the deaths resulted from a contract killing. Law enforcement investigators continue to work on leads that they hoped would bring them closer to apprehending the killer, but things kind of ground to a halt around 2017. However, as recently as October 2021, investigators returned to the site of the shootings to help clarify and test details at the scene. So, I mean, that was last month, Gibbs, from where we are right now.
Exactly.
So you would have to think there is still quite a bit of hope that this case can be solved.
Yeah, why would you spend those resources if they didn't think there was still hope?
Well, obviously there was something that sparked them to go back out so recently. We'll talk about it later on in the episode. But I always think in these unsolved cases, it's great that you have very recent activity.
Yeah.
It just gives you such a sense of hope that a case could be solved or could be solved quickly. So let's dive into the details of the shootings. On the afternoon of September 5th, 2012, 45-year-old father of three, Silvain Mollier, was cycling through the village of Chevaline. He continued his way up into the mountains on his road bike. He was a local, and he worked in the nearby village of Eugene as a welder for a company specializing in nuclear power and renewable energy. At the same time, Sylvain was on his afternoon ride. The al-Hilli family set off on a scenic drive. In the car were 50-year-old Saad al-Hilli, his 47-year-old wife, Iqbal, and their two daughters, 7-year-old Zainab and 4-year-old Zina. Iqbal's 74-year-old mother, the girl's grandmother, Souhaila al-Alaf, was also in the car, having joined the family on their vacation. The family was staying in their caravan at a campsite about 8 kilometers from Chevaline on the western side of Lake Annecy. It was a perfect spot to stay amongst the spectacular scenery. According to the British online newspaper The Independent, Saad was born in Iraq and moved to Britain in the early 1970s as a child with his parents and older brother, Zaid. In 2003, Saad married his wife, Iqbal, a dentist, and the couple went on to have their daughters, Zainab and Zina. Saad and Iqbal were devoted and affectionate parents whose children were their entire world.
As it is with most parents.
It is. I mean, we've talked about it before, Gibbs, but people listening, when they think back about their child or their children being born, it's not cliche to say that it changes your entire life.
Yeah.
There's just no way around it. For me, it's kind of like life before children and life after children. Doesn't mean you need to have children.
No.
But if you do, it definitely changes your life.
It does.
The family loved taking vacations in their camper. They traveled quite a bit. Saad was highly intelligent and worked as a satellite and computer engineer contractor. The family, including Saad's brother Zaid, lived in the Claygate area of Surrey, outside of London, in the brothers' parents' former home. On the day of the murders, the al-Hillis drove in their BMW from their campsite up a narrow, winding road in the Combe-D'Ire Forest near Lake Annecy. The road led to a parking area where you could turn around and drive back down. Just after 3:30 p.m., the al-Hillis in their BMW overtook Silvain Mollier, who was cycling ahead of them. Now, no one really knows exactly what happened next, but it's estimated that around 3:40 p.m., the al-Hillis reached the parking area and they pulled over. Saad and his eldest daughter, Zainab, got out of the car, and that's when they were fired upon by an unknown killer. At that moment, Sylvain Mollier arrived at the same spot where he was reportedly shot 7 times. Saad managed to get to his feet. He made it back to the car, and he tried to speed off. But in his panic, the vehicle got wedged in a pullover area on the edge of the road. The gunman moved towards the vehicle and fired a number of shots into the BMW. Saad, Iqbal, and Suhaila were each shot twice in the head at point-blank range. Having run out of ammunition, the killer returned to where Zainab lay on the ground and struck her in the head. The attacker then fled the area on a motorbike without a trace. But even though young Zainab was left for dead, she managed to get to her feet and she stumbled back towards the car.
So I find it strange that, they're going up this mountainside road to take a look at this scenic view. And when they get to the top of this road, where all they can do is turn around or park, at that moment is when they're hit with all this gunfire.
Yeah, it's almost as if the killer was waiting for them specifically, or maybe just anyone, to reach the top of this road, this turnaround area. One of the things that really jumped out at me, Gibbs, is so Saad and one of his daughters, they get out, they're fired upon, they're hit. Saad has a real decision to make. Does he go after his daughter, who may or may not be dead? He probably doesn't know. Or does he get back in the car and try to save the rest of his family?
Yeah.
That is an extremely tough decision for, any parent. You don't want to leave anyone. You don't want to, have harm come to any member of your family, but he's got to make a decision. And what he chooses to do is get back in the car and try to drive to safety.
Well, maybe he thought his oldest daughter was already dead, and that was his best scenario, was just to go ahead and try to save everybody else.
Yeah, possibly. Or maybe he thought there was nothing he was going to be able to do for her anyway. And maybe the best thing for her was if he could get professional help. Still, very tough decision.
This killer was determined to the point he walked up to the car and shot people at point blank range.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And then, Gibbs, you got to talk about this Sylvain guy. He's just out for a bike ride.
Yeah.
And, happens upon this spot, is shot 7 times. And I know we'll talk about it later in the episode, but when you get into the discussion of, was this a hit? Was this a killer who was just waiting on whoever was going to show up? The fact that reportedly these people didn't know each other kind of leads you to believe that this was a person just out to kill whoever they came across.
Or if somebody was targeted, then either the family or the individual were at the wrong place at the wrong time.
Correct. That could be true as well. The carnage was first discovered by Brett Martin, a British ex-RAF pilot. Like Sylvain, Brett had also gone out cycling that day. He set off near his local holiday home When he arrived at the scene just after 3:45 p.m., he saw Sylvain's bicycle lying in the road before he could find the owner. Brett was shocked to see 7-year-old Zainab staggering across the road where she collapsed. Brett told the BBC he initially thought there had been a car accident. So he went to help Zainab, who was near the front of the BMW. He could see that she had sustained a head wound and was drifting in and out of consciousness. It was a bizarre scene. And even though the vehicle was stationary and the doors were locked, it was in reverse gear and the engine was still running. The rear wheels were spinning, causing dirt and gravel to, fly out the back of the car.
I think we could all kind of visualize what that looks like.
Sure.
The car's stuck, but the wheels are spinning. It just can't go anywhere.
Yeah. Brett pulled Sylvain's body away from the front of the vehicle, but he quickly realized that Silvain was dead. And then he realized that the 3 adults inside the car were all dead as well. Saad was in the driver's seat, while Iqbal and her mother were in the back. But Brett didn't see anyone else inside the vehicle. He didn't know that Zaina had been traveling with the family, and her sister Zainab wasn't in any state to even inquire about her sister. But at this point, Gibbs, you got to figure that this guy's a little worried, right? Okay, at first he thinks this was a car accident. I think pretty quickly he realized this is a murder scene.
Yeah.
And it had to go through his head. Okay, is this person still here? Am I going to be the next victim? He tried to dial the emergency number, but the cell phone reception in the area was bad, which meant that he had to ride his bike as fast as he could to get help before anyone else was injured and before Zainab died. And Brett later told the BBC that he realized that he recognized both Silvain and the al-Hilli's vehicle. He'd earlier spotted Silvain as a cyclist ahead of him as he headed out of Cheveline. The al-Hilli family passed him in their maroon BMW along the same road at around 3:30 p.m., heading in the same direction. Brett said he assumed both the car and the cyclist were on their way to the parking area further up the road. And it was while Brett was making the grueling climb sometime around 3:40 p.m. that the killer struck. So Gibbs, when you look at it, this guy was fortunate not to have become a victim himself. When you break down the timing of all of this, it's a pretty short window of time. It really was just a matter of minutes.
Yeah.
For him, between life and death. I mean, if he gets there just a few minutes earlier, he could have been killed as well. Fortunately, first responders on the scene rushed Zainab to the hospital, where she was placed into a medically induced coma. Back at the crime scene, police noticed the BMW appeared to have been reversed into the position where it was found. Forensic technicians worked into the night to gather evidence from the scene before removing the bodies of Saad, Iqbal, and Suhaila, because the family weren't French nationals or even ex-past residents. Investigators assumed there were no survivors apart from Zainab because there was only one child seat in the vehicle. But Gibbs, after 8 hours of processing the scene, officers found little Zina alive in the back of the car. What they theorized was that when the killer opened fire, Iqbal likely grabbed her daughter, pushed her down onto the floor in the rear of the car, where Zina cowered under her mother's legs and skirt, hidden from view. Thankfully, the 4-year-old was physically uninjured, but she was so terrified that she hadn't dared to move until she was discovered. I mean, I think, Gibbs, that is so telling.
It is. About
how much fear this little girl was experiencing. 8 hours of people moving around the car, removing her family members. And she doesn't cry out. She doesn't jump up and say, help me or anything. She's just terrified.
How traumatized she must have been.
Hey, TCAT fans, if you've ever wanted to make your home feel safer, there's no better time than now. This week, our friends at Simply Safe are giving True Crime All the Time Unsolved listeners early access to all their Black Friday deals. We're talking about 50% off their award-winning home security. You heard me talk about it. I've been using Simply Safe for about 4 years now. It is so easy to use. I've added sensors as the years have gone by. They've come out with some amazing new cameras, both indoor and outdoor. I even have the Simply Safe doorbell camera. On top of that, I was able to get rid of my home phone line. Hey, we love Simply Safe because it has everything you need to make your home safe. Indoor and outdoor cameras, comprehensive sensors, all of it monitored around the clock by trained professionals who send help the instant you need it. It was even named Best Home Security Systems of 2021 by U.S. News and World Report. It is so easy to customize a system for your home online in minutes. These are Simply Safe's biggest discounts of the year. You can get a complete home security system starting at just over $100. There are no long-term contracts or commitments. It really is an easy way to start feeling a bit more peace of mind. But you got to hurry. Supplies are limited. Take 50% off at simplysafe.com/TCAT, TCAT today. Go to simplysafe.com/TCAT. I just got my new Away suitcase and I'm in love with it. I bought the smaller one, the one that I can take with me on the plane, but they make all different sizes. Away thoughtfully designed suitcases, bags, and other travel things. It's all they think about, travel. They're always coming out with awesome colors, different shapes and sizes, 360 spinner wheels. They use modern materials. Their suitcases have compression pads, so you can pack more than what you'll ever actually need. They have laundry bags to keep things tidy. It's by far the best suitcase I've ever had. And who isn't thinking about travel? Who doesn't want to get away? Gibby's thinking about it. We're all thinking about it. We all want it. So why not give it? Give the gift of travel. Explore Away's full range of all things travel at awaytravel.com and give the gift that's on everyone's mind. Explore Away's full range of all things travel and start your 100-day trial today by going to awaytravel.com/time. That's awaytravel.com/time and give the gift that's on everyone's mind. In the hours after the killings, French authorities immediately launched a manhunt across Europe for the gunman, whoever had killed the al-Hillis, and Sylvain had a considerable head start on investigators. I mean, it was entirely possible that by that point, the killer could be in another country, maybe in neighboring Switzerland, even Italy, Spain, Germany, Belgium. Anyone with the right kind of vehicle wouldn't have had far to drive through the Alps to cross the border into Switzerland or Italy, which were the closest.
So an easy escape.
Well, and especially with that type of head start. Right? It's not like they would have had to have gone through any roadblocks. Nobody was really looking for them. There wasn't going to be an APB out,
right,
or anything like that. That would have come much later.
So no issues at the border crossing.
In terms of forensic evidence recovered from the scene and the autopsies, the al-Hillis and Silvain had all been shot with a Swiss 7.65 millimeter Luger semi-automatic pistol. I think, what was interesting, Gibbs, was that this firearm was a pre-World War II model, previously standard military issue. And it was said that while it wasn't cheap to buy, it was readily available at the time of the murders.
It's a pretty old gun at that point.
Yeah, it's got to be over 70 years old, give or take. I think the other thing that is a little different for us here in the U.S., we don't have, is that 7.65 is not a common caliber for us in semi-automatic pistols.
Right. We're more accustomed to, 9
millimeter. Ballistic experts concluded that if the shootings had been orchestrated and carried out by a sophisticated criminal enterprise, this wouldn't have been their weapon of choice, right? I mean, if we're thinking about a hit, if this was a hitman, most likely not going to be doing their jobs, carrying out their hits with a 70-year-old pre-World War II Luger.
No, they're going to use something more powerful.
Yeah, this is a caliber that is, that I'm not that familiar with. When I looked it up, it's close, I think, to like a 32 ACP, which is a really small round. And I think the other reason is that, this Luger only held 8 bullets. So that meant that the shooter would have had to have reloaded twice at the crime scene because they figured out that 21 shots were fired.
Yeah, you think if it was a professional, that they would want something that held more bullets.
Yeah, and we know newer models hold a lot more bullets. I mean, you can get semi-automatic pistols that hold 15, 18, 20, maybe even more with different types of magazines. And I think we've all seen enough movies, right, to know that hitmen just want to get in and out. They don't want to be seen. They want to get the job done. I don't like to base too many things off of movies, but I think this is pretty accurate.
Yeah.
They're not there to make a day of it, right? A hitman wants to get in and out. They don't want to have to worry about reloading 3 or 4 times. Now, when it comes to DNA, there are mixed reports on whether any was found at the scene. Some reports claim that none was found, while others say 2 small samples were recovered from the vehicle. Not sure why there are conflicting reports, but, that's not unusual. Gibbs and, the research that we do, we quite often find conflicting reports on various facets of a case. And I think to add to that, there were so many different media outlets around the world covering this story that may have added to discrepancies and details.
I think so.
Different newspapers from around the world. Okay, maybe that explains some of that. Because the media descended on the village of Cheveline and the Lake Annecy area. Across the English Channel, they also camped out in the front of the al-Hilli family home, where British and French investigators worked to find clues. And they had their work cut out for them when it came to analyzing Saad's electronics. He worked from home, and inside the home, he had a number of pieces of computer equipment. I think it's pretty fair to say, Gibbs, he had a lot more computers than your average person.
I think it was something he enjoyed, but also it was his job.
So it would make sense that he would have, maybe quite a few computers for different types of things. I think it's fair to say the police wanted to find out if the al-Hillis had any enemies, especially Saad. Given the nature of his work, according to the Daily Mirror newspaper, his IT contracts were said to be linked to national security. So that's going to be a little bit eye-raising.
It is.
Of course, authorities also had to look into Sylvain's background as well. And we'll talk about the aspects of that investigation in a bit. But I think what's very important is that authorities ruled out any connection between Saad al-Hilli and Silvain.
So now what? You're left to determine if the killer came to shoot the one family or the individual, and they were just at the wrong place at the wrong time, or was the killer there just to shoot anybody that came up the hill?
And they were both there.
Yes.
At the wrong place at the wrong time.
Right.
Yeah, I really think those are the options. The sisters returned to the UK just over a week after the attack. Due to the trauma of the incident, Zainab had no meaningful memory or recollection of the events. And I think, Gibbs, that's understandable. She was 7 years old.
Mm-hmm.
She was shot. I'm sure at some point she was in shock. We said she was induced into a medical coma. Beyond telling French police that there was one bad man, she really couldn't offer anything else in the way of additional information. She just couldn't remember. But while her visual memory of the killings was poor, she could recall the sounds of gunfire and, even worse, the terrified screams of her father.
How haunting is that?
Oh, that's going to stay with you forever. Both girls remained under the care of British social services in the months following the murders. They made the girls' privacy their priority, which I think is very important because we mentioned it, right? The media is descending. They're going to want to try to take pictures. And so you've got to shield these two young girls.
Yeah, because you know how the media can be.
So we talked about how there were multiple law enforcement agencies on the case. And sometimes, Gibbs, I think, you look at that and say, okay, that's great. It should make finding the killer easier.
But we know better than that.
Yeah, we know it doesn't always work out that way. Coordinating this type of investigation is difficult. For one thing, you have the multi-jurisdictional aspect to it. Then you also had the French criminal justice system, which is an inquisitorial system, meaning that a judge supervises investigations. So, there the mythology is a little different than it is in places like Britain and the US, where the criminal justice system is adversarial. And the onus is on the prosecution, right, to prove that someone committed a crime. And despite the best efforts of investigators around the world, they kept hitting a number of stumbling blocks. Numerous theories and suspects were pursued at various stages of the investigations. And I think it's at this point that we should, look at some of the theories and suspects in chronological order as they evolved to see whether any one theory is more likely than another. I think first off, we have to talk about Brett Martin. Right? He's the man who discovered the bodies. Investigators had to see, or had to at least look at him to see if he was involved.
Sure. I mean, he was the first one on scene.
Yeah. He has to be looked at.
Yeah.
Brett told police that one of the reasons he was so shocked when he happened upon the scene was because he didn't hear any gunshots before he got there. Detectives conducted an acoustic reconstruction of the scene by taking Brett back to the wooded road. He was positioned where police estimated he would have been at the time of the shootings. And then about 200 meters away, up at the parking area, an officer fired multiple times. Brett couldn't hear any of the gunshots. The reason was that at the time, the noise of the river rushing through the forest and over rocks concealed the sound of gunshots.
And of course, with him being an ex-military person, I'm assuming he would know what gunshots sounded like.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about that. But I think this is a fascinating piece of the investigation. My thought, Gibbs, is that investigators probably doubted his statement.
Right.
Okay. 200 meters and you didn't hear a thing? Sounds off.
Until they get out there and realize he was telling the truth.
But at least they took the time to do that, right? To kind of do this experiment. They just didn't pull him in a room and kind of browbeat him for 8 hours with no food and water, trying to get him to confess.
Yeah, and I think it's good for the investigation, too, because now they know it's unlikely anybody heard the shots in that area unless they were closer.
Yeah, which, as far as we know, no one was. Police also had to seriously entertain the idea that the al-Hillis weren't the target at all. We've kind of talked about it, right? Was Sylvain or maybe the family in the wrong place at the wrong time? They had to look at it both ways. It was entirely possible that the family and not Sylvain were the ones in the wrong place at the wrong time. Investigators looked into Sylvain's work background. And while he worked for a nuclear power corporation, his role didn't require any security clearance. He didn't have access to, any type of classified information. Apparently, he had some conflict with his in-laws. Police looked into that, but didn't amount to anything.
Who doesn't get along with some of their in-laws sometimes?
Well, first of all, you can't get along with everyone all the time. Now, add the family dynamic into it, and I think it makes it even more true.
Exactly.
Because, okay, things are going to pop up where there are going to be disagreements. There's going to be some hurt feelings and things like that.
But in this case, it's interesting that really the police can't find anything here, right? He's not somebody with high security clearance at the nuclear power plant. He's no secret agent.
As far as we know.
Right.
Or as far as they know.
Yeah. So
there just really wasn't anything in his background to suggest that someone would have wanted him dead. For what reason, right? They couldn't find a reason. We talked about the fact that police focused heavily on the nature of Saad's work and the information that he had access to when his work computers were forensically analyzed. It was discovered that Saad had information far beyond what he needed in terms of, the scope of his job. French authorities told the BBC they were suspicious about espionage and whether Saad had planned to sell the information to security agencies outside of Britain, possibly intel agencies from his native Iraq. I think what makes this a little bit more confusing and could perhaps eliminate this lead is that the information that he accessed in his current role, it wasn't really related to any type of national security.
So it doesn't really seem like either of these men would have been targeted for a contract killing.
Not from the information that was available.
And why even bring that type of gun if you were a hitman?
Yeah, that one really has me scratching my head. To me, I'm not saying it rules it out completely. It just seems so strange that this would be a hit or a contract killing, and the hitman or contract killer would choose to bring that weapon. I just don't get it. And then I think you have to look at the location of the murders. In this part of France, the chances of someone being able to surveil either party, right, the al-Hillis or Sylvain, without being noticed was remote. And I think even, way beyond that, Gibbs, why would someone go to the trouble of, doing surveillance on a family who was on an overseas vacation? Why would they not just kill them at home or at the office back where they live? Police looked into it and couldn't find any evidence that the al-Hillis had been followed to France from Britain. CCTV footage from a week before the murders tracked the family as they drove onto the ferry at Dover on the south coast of Britain, then off the ferry at Calais on the north coast of France. As they drove the 8 hours to Lake Annecy, no vehicle was seen following them as they passed through toll gates and gas stations. So, this is a lot of work.
It is a lot of work
on the part of investigators. They are really pouring through a lot of footage to try to determine if this family was followed. Okay, they didn't find any.
So if somebody was wanting to kill this family, they had to know where they were staying at. If they didn't follow them,
they had to know ahead of time where they were going or where they would be.
Exactly.
But even more so, that would mean they either had to follow them up the hill, which you would think somebody would see that you're following them, or they would have to somehow know that they were going up the hill to this turnaround park spot.
Yeah, anticipate that.
And get there ahead of time and wait on them.
No, very likely.
No, not that's. I think that's the problem with this case. So far, none of these scenarios jump out at you as, oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Right. Because
they really don't. All right, Gibbs, let's take our last break. And first off, let's talk about June's Journey. This is a game that I've been playing quite a bit lately. For me, it's one of those kind of getaways in between all of the research that we do. And who doesn't want to experience a very good whodunit? We know you do because you're into whodunits, and we know you'll love June's Journey. You play as June Parker, an amateur detective investigating a series of mysteries full of twists and turns around every corner. At the heart, this is a hidden motion picture game. So you're going to need to put your powers of observation to the test, sharpen your sleuthing skills, and you're really going to get a thrill out of solving these cases. This is a game that's extremely immersive. The graphics are amazing. The scenes play out in a way that you'll really appreciate. So whether you're craving a good mystery or you just need to get away for a while, June's Journey is the perfect game for you. You'll search for hidden clues to solve mystery after mystery across thousands of vivid scenes, and they have new chapters every week. So there's always a new case waiting to be cracked. So when you're ready to awaken your inner detective, download June's Journey free today on the Apple App Store or Google Play. You know what? In every single episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved, we dive deep into many unforeseen scenarios. So as you all know, the unexpected does happen. If a medical emergency arises, an Air Med Care Network membership protects your family and your finances. Air Med Care Network crews provide air medical transport to the nearest and most appropriate trauma center. And as a member, you'll never see a bill for that flight. That's right. Members never pay a dime for transport when flown by an AMCN provider. And health insurance may not cover the full cost of emergency medical air transport. So, when you really get down to it, this is a very important membership to have. It covers everyone in your household for just pennies a day. And right now, True Crime All the Time Unsolved listeners get up to a $50 Amazon or Visa e-gift card when you join. So be prepared with an Air Med Care Network membership. Visit airmedcarenetwork.com/true and use our offer code TRUE. Investigators started to look a little closer to home to see if there were any unresolved or lingering family tensions, and it turns out that there were. Saad and Zaid's late father, who passed away a year before the murders, had amassed quite a portfolio of assets, including some overseas investment properties. Investigators found things were strained between the brothers over Zaid's decisions around the future of his late father's apartment. Okay, this is something that does happen in family.
It does.
When parents pass away and they have some money, you have siblings who don't always agree on, let's say, how things should be handled, how money should be divided, what should be sold and what shouldn't. It can create quite a bit of tension.
It can actually ruin a lot of families.
It can. In December 2011, according to the British Telegraph, Saad discovered Zaid had persuaded their father to sign a blank will document, making Zaid the sole beneficiary.
Well, that would not make anybody outside of Zaid happy.
No, I think as a brother or a sister, a sibling, whatever, you're going to view that as a sign that that person's trying to take everything. They're trying to get over on you. Saad grew so concerned about the management of his father's financial affairs that he did some digging. And this is really where the brotherly relationship kind of broke down completely. As investigators probed the family's finances, they found the brother's late father had held a Swiss bank account for over 20 years. German, British, and French media outlets reported this money was allegedly connected to former Iraqi dictator Saddam Hussein. Now, I don't know if this is true. I don't know that they had anything to back this up, but there were quite a few outlets that reported this. Either way, the account basically held savings. It definitely was not a transactional account.
So just a place to park some money.
Sure. But Zaid had some explaining to do when it was discovered that he'd also forged his father's signature on a credit card application attached to the account. And I guess, Gibbs, the dispute between the brothers escalated to the point where Zaid moved out of the family home and Saad changed the locks.
Family drama, money, greed. There's some potential motive there.
Well, we know a lot of people are killed over money. There's just no doubt about it.
Yeah.
According to the Tribune de Genève newspaper, 2 days before Saad was killed, he made plans to visit the Swiss bank. So I'm sure, Gibbs, when investigators learned that, they had to have been thinking, okay, this is more than just a coincidence. that he's going to visit the Swiss bank. He's over in the French Alps and he's killed. But Zaid was proved to be in Britain at the time that the killings occurred. And according to GQ magazine, he said he didn't even know that the al-Hillis were in France at all. But, here's the other thing that we know from so many cases that we've done. The fact that you're not in the location where the murder occurred doesn't mean you didn't have anything to do with it.
No, if you've got enough money to pay somebody to do the work for you, you'll do that.
And you can be in Britain and have your alibi and stand by that. And I think even though it was proven he was in Britain at the time of the murder, French police felt that Zaid was a strong suspect. So strong, in fact, that he was arrested in June 2013 on suspicion of conspiracy to commit murder, and he was released on bail. He said he didn't do it.
But they had insufficient evidence. They weren't going to be able to hold him.
No, because in January 2014, the Guardian newspaper reported that there was insufficient evidence to proceed with the charge against him. Zaid continues to strongly deny any involvement in the murders, and he's adamant that he and Saad had a healthy relationship. And I do think, Gibbs, it's important to point out that there really is no evidence of any substance linking Zaid to the crime. He was arrested, but they let him go. According to the French news website France 24, he went so far as to suggest that Sylvain was the intended target, claiming that this avenue of inquiry was covered up by French police.
You get some of that international blaming going on, right? Between investigators, maybe?
Yeah, I could see how people would view it as that, maybe thinking that French authorities didn't want to believe that, one of their citizens was the intended target, because why? That would maybe mean that he was doing something he shouldn't have been. Again, I don't know that there's any evidence that any of these people involved were doing anything that they shouldn't have been, but I could see where people might make that leap. And then, I think another theory, Gibbs, and probably the one that people fear the most, is that neither Sylvain or the al-Hillis were targets.
Yeah, if you're talking about a random shooter, just felt that day they had to shoot people, that's scary.
That's very scary. The Independent reported in October 2012 that leaked police intel indicated the possibility that a lone and psychologically disturbed killer was responsible. It said that whoever had committed the murders was experienced, organized, and may have had law enforcement or military training. And we mentioned scary. I think any time that you're talking about something that is just completely random, that scares people.
It certainly does, and should.
I mean, any murder is scary. To think that someone is targeted is scary. But in that scenario, you kind of think somebody did something wrong or they did something to upset someone. Now you're just talking about people going out for a stroll, a drive. They're on vacation, they're sightseeing. They run into a shooter who's just looking for random victims. That is a scary thought.
It is.
In October 2013, the BBC revealed that at the time of the murders, a gray BMW four-wheel drive vehicle with British plates was spotted driving very fast up the road towards the parking area. According to the Tribune de Genève, the driver had dark skin and was slightly bald. Brett Martin had previously told police that as he cycled up the road, a little after he was overtaken by the al-Hillis, he saw a man on a motorbike driving unusually slowly back down. Brett cycled on to the parking area where he made the gruesome discovery. And I think Gibbs, many people believe that this motorcyclist is the killer, who was possibly working in conjunction with the driver of the gray BMW.
Well, then you got to wonder if you're going back to that whole hired killer or killers. Because now you got one car, one motorbike. Is one a spotter? One's the shooter.
And you're saying that because these people would be working together.
Yeah.
And I get that. But how scary is it to think that you have two individuals working together as random killers? That's scary as well.
It is.
And I think it's possible. We've seen partner killers before. It's happened. So I don't know that it necessarily means that it has to have been a contracted killing. I see where you could make the case for it, though. If you have two individuals working together, then two more witnesses who were forestry workers came forward in 2013 to say that they'd been driving in the area on the day at the time of the murders. They saw a motorcyclist dressed in black, riding a black and white motorbike, pull into the parking area before the shootings occurred. The witnesses told police they saw the man's face through a gap around the mouth area of his dark-colored helmet. The helmet was said to be similar to French police-issue motorbike helmets from the 2000s. According to GQ magazine, the motorcyclist also had a goatee. In February 2014, French news website Connection reported that a local 48-year-old man was arrested after he was suspected of being the bearded motorcyclist. Numerous firearms were seized during a search of the man's home, but it turned out that he was simply an avid gun collector. This line of inquiry was fully eliminated in 2015. The Independent reported the mystery motorcyclist turned out to be a man from Lyon who had found himself in the forested area by accident while on his way to Cheveline.
So that eliminates that.
Yeah, we don't know how exactly they ruled this guy out, but it was reported that they did. Gibbs, this case is yet another example of proof that even if someone has passed away, they can still be considered a suspect. And this is where 50-year-old Patrice Menegaldo, who was an ex-member of the French Foreign Legion, comes in. He lived there in the area. According to the Daily Mirror, Menegaldo had the training to commit the murders. Police were prompted to look closer at him as they made inquiries into Sylvain's family background. Now, apparently, as reported in The Guardian, Menegaldo carried on an affair for 7 years with Sylvain's sister and also knew Sylvain's partner. Officers interviewed Menegaldo in April 2014, but only 2 months after police came knocking, he took his own life. According to reports, police didn't really consider this guy a suspect at the time, and sadly, we don't know why he took his own life. It could have been that this guy suspected that police thought he was involved in the killings, and this pressure may have led to his suicide.
Yeah. Now, he did leave a letter, but only the police know what that letter says.
Yeah, they've never released the contents, so we don't really know what he said in the letter. And then I think Gibbs, the last theory that we have to look at is the possibility of an active serial killer. The Times newspaper reported police looked at a 34-year-old ex-soldier suspected of committing 2 other local murders, both in 2017. One was the death of a 24-year-old man who was hitchhiking at night. The other was the abduction and murder of an 8-year-old girl who disappeared from a wedding, which the man in question was attending. So not a whole lot of information here, right? We don't know this guy's name. As far as I know, he's not been arrested, but apparently he's suspected of committing some other murders.
So nothing really came from all that.
Well, and I don't know how it could. Could this have been the work of an active serial killer? Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't rule something like that out. We know serial killers exist. We know they operate all over the world. Could it have been this guy? Sure. As far as we know, there's no evidence to prove that. And there's really no evidence to suggest that it was a serial killer. But that's the thing with these unsolved cases. All we have are theories and things to look at. It's one that you definitely can't rule out.
And we had a lot of theories.
Yeah, absolutely. In September 2017, French police announced that they were no closer to being able to explain why the murders occurred. They also said that they didn't have any solid suspect. So my take on that, Gibbs, is that has to be tough for police to come out and say that. But also, I think it's hard to have a solid suspect when you can't figure out what the motive for the murders was.
Kind of need that to help determine who was involved in this.
Well, it sure helps. I mean, I think you can do it without it. You can back into the motive, or you can get the motive from the killer, but it certainly helps to have the motive to help lead you to the killer. Why was this person killed, or why was that person killed? Okay, that clues you in on who could have possibly done it.
And because it's more clouded, because the two independent parties,
that makes it even tougher.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the al-Hilli sisters a little bit. They were both very young when they witnessed something that no one should ever have to see. It's impossible, really, to imagine the trauma that both of these girls went through. I mean, witnessing a murder would be horrific, traumatizing. But then when you talk about the murder of a family member,
right,
your parents, you're in a strange country, 4 and 7 year olds. That's tough.
Yeah. You just lost, you said your parents, your grandma,
your grandmother. Yes. Now, at the time of the murders, investigators had to proceed extremely cautiously in trying to gather evidence from the two young girls. We mentioned it, very, very young, but investigators had to look at these two girls as possibly holding the key to helping them solve the case. And I think police have to be very careful in, trying to interview kids this young. I mean, first of all, you don't want to re-traumatize these kids.
No.
And then I think, secondly, you have to try to maintain the integrity of the investigation. Kids, let's face it, they say a lot of things. Some true, some not true. Some things they may believe are true, but they really aren't.
Right. I mean, when you think about that day, Zena was only 4. She was huddled down underneath her mom's skirt on the floor. What is she going to really tell the police?
I don't think she saw anything.
Yeah. So that just leaves her older sister then.
In September 2020, it was announced that the sisters would be re-interviewed. At that point, the girls were 15 and 12 years old and had been living under new identities with a maternal aunt. Then in February 2021, the Daily Mail newspaper reported a breakthrough. French police were investigating an unrelated assassination plot said to be orchestrated by a gang of hitmen, some of whom were members of the Freemasons. It was said that they were set to murder a Parisian hypnotherapist. When officers searched the home of the alleged ringleader, they found ammunition matching the type that was found at the scene of the Annecy murders. And I think what makes this even more intriguing is that the man was a former senior member of a French intelligence agency. 4 months later, in June 2021, Sky News reported detectives were investigating a businessman said to be the gang's alleged leader, some with links to the Annecy area. Apparently, some of the gang members were taken into custody. It's been said that some of them included former and current French intelligence agents. And then, Gibbs, as recently as October 2021, investigators returned to the scene of the shootings to re-examine details and compare these with witness statements, but no further details have been released. Obviously, that was just last month from the time that we're recording this episode.
So it sounds like they've got a lot of different new leads they're looking at, trying to work.
Yes. Which I think is very positive. The fact that something is going on so recently. Now, it also means that because it's so recent, not a lot has been disclosed, but maybe in the near future, there'll be some big bombshell that's dropped, and, you never know.
It is alarming that if some of these French intelligence agents are involved. If. It's scary.
Yeah, big if. But
yeah.
No, it would be because, again, why? We still have to come back to why. No matter who it is, what was the reason for the murders?
Right.
Now, if there were some intelligence agents involved, to me, that would mean that there was more to the victims, or the victims knew something that to this point police either haven't garnered, or maybe they have, but they haven't shared.
Right.
And that's one of the struggles with unsolved cases. You don't get to know everything that the police know. They're not just going to run to the newspaper and say, hey, here's everything we know. They don't do it.
Right.
When a case is solved, I won't say everything, but most things come out. Let's say there's a trial, all that evidence is going to be laid bare.
Yeah, with all the court documents and
Sure.
things like that.
But in an unsolved case, there's a lot of things that police may know, but not want to share. If you have information on the murders of the al-Hilli family and Silvain Mollier, you can contact Surrey Police in Britain via their website, www.surrey.police.uk, or French police at www.gendarmerie.interior.gov.fr. So Gibbs, as we wrap up this case, it's very intriguing from the standpoint that we don't know what the true motive for these killings was. We really don't even know if there was a true intended target.
Yeah, who was the prime target?
If there was one. Or, like we've hypothesized, could it have possibly been a killer who just wanted to shoot people?
Yeah, just random.
And they were waiting up there at that parking spot, and whoever came was going to get shot.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I said, I do think it's interesting that there is some very current movement. Now, whether something results from that or not, we're going to have to wait and see, but you feel horrible for the two daughters.
Mm-hmm.
You feel horrible for Sylvain's family.
Sure.
They've got no answers. On top of the fact that they lost their loved ones, it's a very tough case all the way around. We got some voicemails. You want to check those out?
Let's hear them.
Hey guys, this is Dana from Kalamazoo, Michigan. Longtime listener, first time caller. I just finished the Dayton Strangler, and I just wanted to say, Gibby, you can impersonate Sean Connery anytime. I love him. I love you guys. Have a super day, and keep your own time ticking.
Who doesn't love Sean Connery?
Everybody loves a little good Sean Connery.
That dude is just cool.
He is cool.
And
of course, he's dead now, but
well, yeah.
But he's cool even where he's at today.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking of in just the sense of he has so much on film.
He does.
That you can go back and you can look at all these actors that have now passed and say Brando was cool. James Dean was cool. They just had that swagger. Connery, to me, just the way he talked, the way he looked, and kind of the way he carried himself.
Right.
He just had a swagger about him.
A lot of people think he's like the real James Bond out of that whole series. He was the best James Bond.
Oh, I would say that without a doubt.
Yeah.
I like Daniel Craig. He's pretty good.
Yeah.
But to me, when I think of James Bond, I think of Sean Connery.
Yeah,
that's just it.
Hey guys, it's Brenna Grendel. I'm a huge fan of the show. I just did a tour of all three of Meow Wolf's locations. So I drove from Las Vegas to Santa Fe to Denver, and you guys kept me company all the way back home, most of the way through Utah until I had my dashboard light up like a Christmas tree, and I broke down in the dark about 40 miles outside of Salt Lake City dressed as an alien. And I was thinking, oh, heck, I'm going to end up on episode 230, just watch. But no, I'm fine. I actually did make it home. Everything was great. Thanks for keeping me company, guys. Your show is awesome. I don't think I'm team anyone because I don't cotton to sport, but if I did, I'd probably be team Gibby because I like saying Gibby Dibby. It's kind of fun. Anyway, guys, listen, thanks for the show. Have an awesome night and stay safe and take your time talking.
All right, love it. So here's my take. Nobody wants to have their car break down.
No.
Nobody wants to have their car break down in the dark.
No.
Nobody wants to have their car break down when you're wearing an alien spacesuit.
I just know I don't want my car to break down and an alien come do that thing they did to me that one time.
Yeah.
That was once was enough.
You never stop talking about that.
Woo! Hi. This is David from Kentucky. I just wanted to say that I love the podcast. I started listening back in May. I'm all the way caught up on true crime all the time. Episode 53 on Unsolved. I like Unsolved. Unsolved has got a little more Gibby. Everybody likes a little more Gibby. I just wanted y'all to know that I'm 180% team #Gibby. Fergie, you'll get this when I tell you go Blue Devils. Keep up the good work and keep your own time ticking.
Woo! I like that. Oh, wait. Fergie, he's shaking his head about those Blue Devil things.
How can you be a Blue Devils fan in Kentucky? No, the Blue Devils have a really good organization. I don't know if you want to call it that, but they have one of the best coaches of all time. It's a great program.
Was that hard to do?
I just can't root for them because of bad blood, bad history.
It was really rough for you to say, wasn't it?
No, I can freely admit that.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean I root for them or I have to like them or anything like that. I have a lot of friends that are Duke fans. I only talk to them occasionally.
Yeah. after your team beats them.
Yeah.
Hey, Mike and Gibby, it's Caitlin again. I have called once before, but I just had to call again because I just listened to the Elise Baker case, and that actually happened in my hometown. And the place where they found her prosthetic leg is not far from my parents' house, and my dad was actually there whenever they found her prosthetic leg. And he's not the type of guy to show emotion very often, but when he came home that evening after they had found it, I could tell that it was upsetting him and that it really had an effect on him. And I just wanted to tell you guys that the place they found her prosthetic leg, there is a huge memorial there for Zara, and there's actually a playground dedicated to her. It's called the Zara Baker All Children's Playground. It's a playground that has swings for children in wheelchairs and just children of all kinds. Anyway, thank you guys for your podcast. Yeah, keep your own time ticking. See you later.
All right. Thanks for calling in. Thanks for providing some information. I've always thought this, Gibbs, detectives, people like that, when something major like that happens, it's got to be extremely tough for them.
Yeah.
How do you shut that down?
You go home every night and sit down like most people and have a little dinner and not think about all that.
Right. It's got to be very tough. Something that you take home. So, but we appreciate all the voicemails. And that's it, Gibbs, for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
How much is your time worth? Whether you're a realtor, lawyer, accountant, or even a content creator, Stamps.com gives you the chance to focus your time on what you do best. Don't waste your time mailing letters or shipping packages. Stamps is there to help. Print stamps, shipping labels, or certified mail forms in seconds. Get up to 89% off USPS, UPS, and other carriers, and schedule free package pickups all from one place. Stamps.com also makes it easy to track shipments, manage contacts, and report on how much you send and spend. Over the last 28 years, more than 4 million customers have relied on Stamps.com to make their lives easier. Don't waste time worrying about being a postage expert or standing in line to drop off letters and packages. Let Stamps.com do what they do best so you can do what you do better. Go to Stamps.com/audio to sign up for a special offer. No contract, cancel anytime. That's Stamps.com/audio.